Welcome back, viewers, to Read on the Record podcast. Thank you so much for joining. I am Frank, your host,
I-
and this
I'm
is.
Dan Malloy.
All right, welcome back, Dan.
Thanks, Frank.
I would like to
I,
thank all of our listener, supporters, and viewers. If you are joining us on YouTube, if you could hit that like button and subscribe button, that would really help us. If you could leave a comment, that's going to help the YouTube algorithm know that we exist. If you are watching on Spotify, then guess what? We would really appreciate a follow and a review of our show. And some exciting news for you, Dan, about Apple Podcast.
Let's say it, Frank.
Our podcast has been selected by Apple as one of a select few shows out there. This will be eventually brought to most of the other podcasts, but we're part of a pilot program where Apple Podcasts, for the very first time, is going to be offering video support to their podcast. How about that?
Great.
That's right.
Oh,
So,
fantastic, Frank. That's because of you.
I don't know if it's because of me. I think it's because of our awesome content that we make here at John Reed
You're
and
supposed to say
Associates.
because of you, Dan.
You
I
notice
just
how
gave
I
you a
segued away
compliment,
from that. That's right.
I thought you'd give it back, but okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay. No, but
That's
that's
it.
really great, Frank. That's excellent.
All right, Dan, what are we going to be discussing here today?
Well, how about we start out, Frank, talking about the bait question in the
The
Reid
bait
technique?
question. Okay, yeah.
Okay, now a lot of people, there's different names for this question. A lot of
Hmm.
investigators use it, but in the Reid technique, the bait is a question we generally reserve for the interview, and it is a non-accusatory question in which the investigator suggests the possible existence
Hmm.
of incriminating evidence to see if the subject will either change or consider changing their story. The bait is many times misused by investigators. A lot of times it's misused, and you see this all the time on TV where investigators are saying to people, "We got your fingerprints, we got your DNA, we got you on video, all this stuff." The problem is that it's a statement you make, and it's a challenge to the suspect. And you got to look at it from the standpoint is that if you're dealing, especially in our interviews, we're not accusing people of committing any wrongdoing. We're asking questions to determine if they have any involvement in what we're investigating. So the bait we've developed in the sense that we want to ask it in a non-accusatory manner, and we always frame it in this way. And let me use you, Frank, here as a possible example here. If I was interviewing you, and let's just say there was a shooting in a particular area of
Hmm.
town, I would first of all establish whether or not you were in that area to see what your explanation would be. And I'd simply say, Frank, were you in the area of uh, Madison and Apple Street yesterday between 7 and 9 p.m.? That's the time that the shooting was to have occurred. Were you in that area, Frank?
No, I was not. I was
Okay,
nowhere near that area, Dan.
okay. Now, Frank would establish where were you, Frank?
Well, I didn't want to say anything, but I was at my friend Joe's house that day. I was
Okay.
nowhere near there.
All right. And then we get where Joe lives and that type
Hmm.
of situation and that. So we just establish that. We're not challenging him on it. We just get the little details of it. Then me as the investigator, I might bait him. I might say to him, now, Frank, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in that area of Wacker and Apple Street, there are surveillance cameras from various businesses. There's a bank in that area. There's a gas station. There's a 7-Eleven, and it covers pretty well the area where that shooting took place. We're in the process right now, Frank, of trying to gather those videos. It does take some time to get them from the various locations and that and examine them. But my question to you right now is this, Frank, and we're in the process of doing that. Is there any reason why, Frank, when we get those videos, we observe them, and that it will show you in that area of Wacker and Apple. Now, Frank, I'm not saying that you were involved in that shooting, but perhaps maybe it had slipped your mind. You had walked by that area earlier and it just kind of slipped your mind. Is that possible, Frank?
Well, it's possible, but I think I would have remembered if I did something like that because usually what I do, yeah, pulling away, looking away like
Yeah.
this, barrier posture. I'm like, oh boy,
They're
yes, the bait,
qualifiers too.
the
Now,
qualifiers, yeah.
that tells me as the investigator that I planted that seed, and you, as the subject now, are thinking, oh, brother, I wasn't counting on those videos. I
Hmm.
didn't even think about it, okay? I didn't get a chance to really kind of rehearse my story, but when they view them, perhaps it is going to show me in that area where the shooting occurred. And the face saver that I gave Frank here was I'm not saying you were involved in the shooting, but maybe you had just walked by that area a little bit earlier and that had slipped your mind. It's important, if you can, when you give a bait, to try to give a face saver, and that allows the person to either change or consider changing that original story as Frank did. He qualified it.
Hmm.
If we just ask the bait in this way, which we try not to recommend, but sometimes depending on the investigation, there may be no other way of asking it. If I just said, now Frank, were you in that area of Wacker and Apple Street last night between 6 and 9 p.m.? He
That's
says,
yeah. And he
no.
says, well, no, I wasn't.
Okay. Frank, we're in the process right now of obtaining videos from the cameras in the various locations in that area during that time period. It takes a while to get those videos back to look at them and that. They're very time consuming. But my question to you is, Frank, is there any reason why it's going to show you in that area between 6 and 9 p.m. when that shooting occurred? By me asking the question in that way, if Frank is deceptive, if he is the one that shot the individual, I'm really kind of forcing him to say no to that. Because if he says yes, he actually thinks that that's almost an admission of guilt to the shooting. And
Hmm.
that's why the face saver is really important if you can develop it. Now,
Hmm.
again, some investigations you have, you may not be able to think of a good face saver. It doesn't mean you can't bait the person, but if you don't ask a face saver, you are just going to get a direct, many times, most of the time, a direct no. So my point is, before going in for that interview, look at the information you have about where it was, what all the details of the particular case, and think, okay, if I develop this bait, think of your bait before you go in there. And again, it goes back to being prepared. Try to think of your bait question before you go in there. I just use this as a simple example, but you can also say, in this particular example, any reason why, Frank, someone would say they saw you in that area
Hmm.
where that shooting occurred between 6 and 9 p.m. Not saying that you did it, but maybe you had just walked by that area and somebody just saw you, and that's what they reported. Is there any reason why? He could say, well, I people tell me I look familiar all the time, and that. But again, it's the face saver that gets them to change or consider changing the story.
Oh, yes. And something else I'd like to point out is that the bait question really flows from the history you question. And me and Dan did an entire episode on that, I think. And
Yes,
I will actually link that in the show notes or the related video at the very end so you can catch that in case you missed it. But what is so vitally important, what Dan is explaining, is you need to get a denial and a commitment. A denial is no, I did not do it. And the commitment is, hey, I wasn't there or I was nowhere near that day. If you don't get some kind of denial, some kind of commitment up front, then the bait question won't work. And something else that I'd like to emphasize here, Dan, is the bait question accusatory?
absolutely not. And if you are accusing people, and investigators do that,
Mm-hmm.
we have your fingerprints, we got your DNA. Um, it, it could easily backfire on the investigator, And look at it from another standpoint too. If you're a truthful subject, and I'm an investigator that says,
Hmm.
Frank, I don't know if you're aware of this, but we've taken DNA samples from the area where that sexual assault occurred, from the victim and that. And right now, Frank, the DNA says it's your DNA.
Hmm.
And let's say Frank is telling the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
He's going to go off either the deep end. First of all, he's going to be thinking, how can that possibly be? How can my DNA be on the
Hmm.
victim when I wasn't even there? I don't even know the victim. All right, and that gets innocent people really panicking. Or the other thing is that they look at it and say, is that, who are you kidding? I know you're lying to me. But I'll tell you this, most people that are being interviewed by law enforcement in that, or investigators, aren't looking at the investigator as the investigator is going to be
Hmm.
lying to me in this interview. And so they many times will take it as, what the investigator is saying is true, or there has to be some terrible mistake. So don't keep your phone on, Frank. That's terrible that you had your phone on. I'll turn mine off, okay?
There you go.
That
It's
wasn't
okay.
Frank, but I always place blame on someone or something else other than the subject.
Well, we have
Uh,
to project, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But the biggest thing is that you got to be so careful in making sure that you don't accuse people and
Hmm.
in debate, and that I recommend is that you don't out and out lie to people about that. I mean,
Hmm.
you don't have to uh, do that to be effective in the investigations.
Exactly, yes. And, keeping the interview non-accusatory, because the moment you accuse or you try and call them out on their lies, then guess what? You're going to be in a situation where you could be in an interrogation, from a legal
Right.
standpoint. And
And
we
that's where it
definitely want to
flips back
maintain
and
it. Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
And investigators
Hmm.
do that, and they're now 1 minute they're asking questions, the next minute they're accusing, back and
Hmm.
forth like that, and the, the subject doesn't know what's happening here,
Hmm.
and that's also when an investigator does that, uh, flipping back and forth, accusing, not accusing, and going back to questions that you would ask in an interview, that could make a truthful person look deceptive to the
Exactly.
investigator. And
Yes, yes.
again, people always are criticizing the Reid technique as false confessions. Well, the Reid technique doesn't get a false confession if properly used.
Hmm.
And any technique can get a false confession. I mean, you don't have to be the Reid technique. Anything, if you don't use it properly, can have adverse effects. But what we the last thing we want is an innocent person admitting guilt. And it's not so powerful that you're going to be getting innocent people admitting to things that they didn't do if you follow our practices and you follow the guidelines that we set forth with the Reid technique.
Exactly, yes. And what I would also like to point out is that as you're formulating, I often get a question, Dan, in class, and that question is, well, do I have to use the read technique in its entirety? And I used to tell them, hey, look, if you want to use a tactic, you want to use something, and you don't want to use everything else, feel free to do it. But since engaging a lot of the attendees, I'm starting to back off of my original position on that. Because if you take our behavioral provoking questions like the baiting technique, it doesn't work without the history you. The interpretation doesn't work without the three channels of communication. And then none of that is going to help you if you're not following our core practices and or our core principles and best practices. And what I found is that
Right.
I'm kind of no longer telling them to take one tactic and just see if they like it. Now I'm starting to tell them, I tell them, hey, look, if you want to stray off of the paved road with lines clearly painted on it, you want to go off trail with this stuff, by all means enjoy the madness, but it's not going to be effective, and you could end up with a hodgepodge kind of an interviewing and interrogation methodology. And
I fully
yeah,
agree with you, Frank, and
yeah,
that's where the investigator maybe walks away scratching their head, thinking,
hmm,
"Wow, I'm confused here." Where
yeah,
maybe if they kind of just followed the script
Exactly.
You know,
Yes.
and everything too. And I know you're not saying this, but there are going to be a lot of exceptions in this
Yes. Yes. Of
situation and
course.
that.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to think that it is so regimented that you can't deviate in that. But um, I've even had people ask me this: is that, um, and I found it really kind of strange, where
Hmm.
they said, well, what if the person says they did it in
Hmm.
the interview? Do you still go through all the behavioral analysis questions?
That would be a big fat no. I
No.
would go straight down to step 8. What are you sorry for? What's going on?
Yeah.
And just go straight to step 8 at that point.
Right. Right.
That's
I
what
mean,
I
you
would
have
do.
to,
Yeah.
get adapt in there.
Exactly.
But
Yes.
again,
Yes.
it goes
Just
back to
adapt.
your
Yeah.
planning.
Hmm.
Plan this thing out. And that another thing too, Frank, with the bait question, we want to make sure too. Again, you limit the bait to perhaps one or two questions. A
Hmm.
lot of
Yes. Yes.
investigators do go in there with maybe a half a dozen different bait questions to ask the person. And here's the problem. If I start out saying, Frank, is it possible that you were in that area and you just don't remember? Frank, is there any reason why we're going to find you on video? Is there any reason why, Frank, someone's going to say they saw you? Is there any reason why we're going to get your fingerprints, your DNA? What happens is, after a while, now keep in mind,
Hmm.
I'm asking in a hypothetical, the suspect begins to realize, hey, you're just fishing in there. All
Exactly.
right,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
then you lose a lot of credibility that way with them, and you're just going to get a lot of times just no
Hmm.
in that. The other thing I would suggest too with the bait is that, if let's say I do have Frank on video in that area, maybe not, I don't have him committing the shooting, but
Hmm.
the cameras in this particular area were there, they were operating, but the shooting occurred off screen.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I asked Frank, were you in that area between 6 and 9 p.m.? Let's say the shooting occurred at 7 p.m. Were you in that area between 6 and 9 p.m.? Not saying you were involved in that shooting, but maybe you just walked by that area
Hmm.
earlier or later and you just kind of slipped your mind. And Frank says, no.
Hmm.
The mistake that some investigators will make now, they have you on video. They have you on
Hmm.
video. Okay. Now they say, well, Frank, how do you explain this? And they start
Exactly. Yeah.
pushing
Yeah.
pictures of the
Hmm.
individual in that
Yeah.
area. Maybe not the shooting, not, and again, not shooting the individual, but in that area. See that time stamp right there, Frank? That
Hmm.
says 7 p.m. The shooting is supposed to have occurred at 7:10. How do you explain that? That's you. And now you kind of either you trap that individual, they feel you tricked them. And as soon as
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
subject, I think, feels that that you did trick them, you
Hmm.
lose, I believe, a lot of your sincerity and credibility with them. Now everything that
Exactly.
suspect is thinking is, you're out to get me here. And so, again, I'm not saying it doesn't work sometimes, but a vast majority of the time, I think you're going to have adverse results by doing that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And you don't want to be perceived as trying to browbeat a suspect either. I mean, you want to
Right.
be perceived to always be listening to what they're saying, listening to their side of the story.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, let me ask you this, okay? Suppose I ask somebody 50 questions in the behavioral analysis interview, okay?
Okay.
And they answer deceptively on 49 of them, but on the bait question, they display attitudes and behavior that's truthful. Does the
Mm-hmm.
bait question outweigh the other
No.
49 questions?
No, it
Okay.
doesn't. And in the Reid technique, we go with where a majority of the verbal, nonverbal behavior is. But in this situation like this, and just as assuming right now, is that in a lot of investigations, you have done some investigations and that you are in the process of compiling evidence in that, but it doesn't outweigh it. It's only one question in the scope of everything that we're talking to this person about. And sometimes investigators, and it's no fault of that investigator, may just ask a wrong bait question. For example, a burglary. If I say, Frank, is there any reason why we would find your fingerprints in that person's home where they were abducted or where the property was taken from, Frank? And that. And I'm not saying that you were involved in the burglary, but maybe you were in that area, that house earlier
Yeah, yeah.
in the week or something, just delivering a package or something. The problem is this: if Frank is the one that committed the burglary or robbery, whatever it may be, and he was wearing gloves, his answer to that question is going to be a very simple no.
Exactly.
And he's
Yes.
going to look truthful because he is truthful.
100%. That's right. Yeah, yeah. And so we always go by the totality of the interview itself, the facts, the circumstances, evidence, and everything else that we gathered with it.
The BAI, our interview, is just one piece in this entire investigation. And you're not hanging everything on that interview, and maybe it is given directions. Like in the Nancy Guthrie case,
Yeah.
the BAI interview, as we describe it, would be excellent in the sense of, I think right now, eliminating people from suspicion.
Exactly. Yes, yes.
And you
Big
may
part
get
of
a
that.
lot of people that are concealing maybe suspicions or something, but I think the majority of the time people forget the BAI that, as we present it, eliminates a lot of people in an
Yeah.
investigation, and that's what nobody that uh, criticizes the Reid technique seems to talk about. It's
That's
always
right.
that
Yeah.
the guilty people or the false confessions, and I know there are false confessions, but again, we try to eliminate all the truthful, and that makes your job easier.
Yes, it does. That's right. Yeah. Eliminate.
Yep,
Eliminate the truthful. Eliminate the innocent and identify the guilty. That's right.
that's correct.
That's
Where
it.
you can concentrate. It doesn't mean if I identify you, Frank, as, let's say, in my opinion, as the one committing the crime, that doesn't mean I'm going to now start interrogating you.
Yeah.
If I just talk to 10 people and you're now the one that I feel has lied to me based on my interview, that tells me now I'm going to concentrate efforts in doing further investigations on your alibi, looking at different maybe financial records, talking to people that you're associated with. So it gives me a direction to focus the investigation in.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Exactly. Yeah. I think it's pretty cool. Um, So once we do the bait question, once we step outside, we're doing our evaluation of the behavioral analysis interview. What's the next step, Dan, after we conclude our interview?
Well, the next step would be is that depending on where you fit in, Frank, if
Hmm.
you're someone where I have other people that I'm going to
Hmm.
be interviewing, I would say to you, Frank, thank you for your time and cooperation. I appreciate you not discussing what we talked about here. And by the way, Frank, if necessary,
Hmm.
you'd be willing to come back and talk to me if necessary, wouldn't you?
Okay, yeah, then you get that commitment from them.
And then let him go.
Hmm.
In that. And even if Frank, in my opinion, did commit the crime, depending on certainly what kind of crime we're looking at, I would say the same thing if there are other people to interview. What you don't want to do is, if there's 5 people to talk to, Frank is the first one. Frank is, in my opinion, deceptive, but I have no facts and evidence in this case, just his behavior, verbal and nonverbal. I would not interrogate him now.
Hmm.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
And that's a
yeah.
misconception people, again, have of the Reid technique. We're interrogating everybody. We're not. And in fact, I'd let you go. I'd say the same thing. And I'd want to eliminate everyone else if I can. And the other thing, too, is that, let's say, in my feeling, I'm looking at you, Frank, from that interview. I don't
Hmm.
have evidence in that, but looking at you, that Frank is deceptive. Well, maybe now if I talk to the third or fourth person in these 5 people, that person's interview is going to look 100 times worse than yours. So by interviewing everybody first, it helps eliminate the mistake of
Yes,
interrogating
yes.
innocent people. That's another thing
Exactly.
that
Yes.
critics don't explain about the Reid
hmm
technique.
Read like techniques. As they
Okay.
describe something that is not read like at all. I
Exactly.
like that.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And one other thing now, too, Frank, if we
hmm
have time, I would
Yeah, we
like to
do.
just address something that was brought to my attention by one of our speakers, Lou Sinise. Lou
Okay.
Sinise,
Yeah.
I've worked with Lou for over 50 years at John Reed and Associates. Lou started about a year prior to me,
hmm
and we developed a great friendship. I don't have any siblings, but I look at Lou as like my brother, and I
Okay.
hope he
Yeah.
looks at me the same way.
Does Lou
And
know
Lou
that?
is also
Yeah. Does Lou know
co-author,
that?
yeah,
Okay.
co-author of the book Anatomy of Interrogation Themes. The latest edition has been revised in that, and it's an excellent book. You can go on Amazon, you can go on Read, certainly our website. In fact, I would say go on our
Oh, yes.
website for
Yeah.
products, and
hmm
the book
As
is,
a matter of fact,
yeah,
Dan, just to let the listeners know, there will be a link in the show notes to Lou's book. I will
yes.
put that into the show notes if you're interested in his book, and I encourage anyone to buy Luciny's book. Just click Show More, scroll down the show notes, and you click the link, and it's going to take you right to his book.
Don't buy it on other sites because the
Yeah,
thing
I would
is
avoid
that
going on
they
Amazon.
I
Yeah.
can't believe people at my courses have told me, hey Dan, I just saw this anatomy of interrogation
hmm
themes. It's selling on Amazon or eBay, for
Yeah.
like $50, $70, and all that. When the price of the book is $22,
Yeah.
plus many times shipping, which is nominal, and that. But the benefit of that book is that it has a great overview of the
hmm
Reid technique, but it has over 3,000 different interrogation themes in a wide variety of
Yes.
different
hmm
types of offenses. And many times these crimes in that, they do overlap. And it gives you food for thought. You just can't read through it and say, okay, I'm going to say this, this, and this. No, you got to develop themes in that. So it has a tremendous, what we call first person themes. Now, what
hmm
I just wanted to address, and Lou has used this tremendously in a lot of interrogations that I've seen him do and teaches it in classes that me and him have done, is a third person theme, and that is relating to people in your interrogation that, let's say, you have nothing in common with. I remember Lou talking about this as and he uses this a lot, a gang member. The gang member, he's sitting there in the chair. Lou had interviewed him, and it was about a shooting, actually a robbery gone wrong. The person wasn't killed, but a gun was discharged in
hmm
that. And this was a gang member. He was in his, I'd say, mid 20s. Lou at the time was about
hmm
40 years old. And you look at it. This guy's brought up on the street. He's been in jail before, during the preliminary information that we get background about people establishing the normal, Lou asked him, "Are you married?" He says, "No, I'm divorced, but
hmm
I have a son." "Really?" Lou says. "How old's your son?" And he goes, 4. "Okay." And that, and are you employed? "Well, I'm between jobs right now."
hmm
Okay, so Lou believes he's involved in this robbery where the shooting occurred, and that, and he's developing themes, and the guy is just sitting back, slouched in the chair, just staring at Lou like,
hmm
"Who are you? Who are you talking to?" And that Lou could tell right away that I'm not just we don't have it right now. We're not bonding. We're not developing any
hmm
rapport. And Lou said to him is that you look at me sitting here. Now this is he's saying to the subject. You look at me sitting here. You see me in my suit, tie,
hmm
and
Yeah.
everything. Let me tell you. is that uh, I had things, I don't want to say real easy, but I had things easy. You know, I went to college, I graduated, I got a scholarship from college, and that didn't cost me a dime. Afterwards, I came with this job and started making a lot of money in that. Uh, well, maybe not a lot of money, but I started making decent money here, in that. And I know the suspect is thinking, where is this going?
Yeah,
How is
yeah.
this developed? How are you similar to me? And Lou says, there are some similarities between me and you. Okay? You grew up on one side of the tracks, I grew up on the other. But the thing is this, is that you're a father. I'm a father. I have 3 daughters, Lou would say. And you got a son. And a father's responsibility, they got 3 things a father is responsible for. You know what those 3 things are? He said to the suspect. Let's
Mhm.
put those. No.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Father's responsibility is this: put a roof over their head, put clothes on their back, and put food on the table.
Mhm.
And you know what? You're no different than me in that regard. Okay? That's my responsibility. That's your responsibility. And if you're not doing that, okay, then you're not a good father.
Mhm.
Now, the thing is that by doing this, is that you need to step up here and get this explained. I don't think you're a bad person. I think what happened here was simply to put food on your table, clothes on your son's back, and a roof over their head. You're the kind of person that probably would do anything for their child. You're no different than me. I would do anything for my child in that, okay? And sometimes because of the hands that we're dealt, where a lot of times we get our back up against the wall and we become desperate. We do things that normally we would never
Mhm.
have done. And the problem is, you got a record, you played your debt to society, and correct me if I'm wrong. Every time you go looking for a job, they're asking, you ever been in jail before? And you say,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. They look at you like you got some kind of a disease. You're trying to do the right thing for your family. You're trying to do the right thing so you can put food on the table, clothes
Mhm.
on his back, a roof over their head. But society doesn't let you. And you become desperate. You become desperate. And that's what, Frank, I think this thing happened. Not because you wanted it to, but because you felt in your mind you had no other choice. Am I right, Frank? Am I right? And he says all of a
Mhm.
sudden the suspect is looking at him, and suspect is nodding their head in agreement.
Yeah, yeah. You got to get buy-in to that theme development on that. Yeah. My
And
favorite go-to
yeah,
third-person themes was always a case that was similar. I always liked those.
yes,
Those were a lot, excuse me, easier for me to remember the details from. And you could just change around the demographics of your main character in it to just kind of match the person in front of you. But
and Frank, the statement I like to make in that third person theme about
mhm.
other cases and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is, again, I've said this in other podcasts: misery loves
Loves
company.
company. Yeah.
You don't want to, that person doesn't want to hear about all the good things that are happening. They want to
hmm
hear about other people's problems. And
Exactly.
a lot of times they want to hear about other people's problems that maybe motives have been similar to theirs, or this person was really a bad person and they compare themselves to them thinking, well, geez, I'm not like that person in your story.
hmm I
And
like that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, very, very good. And what I always teach the attendees to the seminars is practice your own favorite third person theme. Buy a copy of Lou's book, read those themes over, read the third person themes, find one that really connects with you, one that you're comfortable delivering, and practice in your own time. Like if you're driving to work, if you're leaving
yeah.
work, practice it. Practice, 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 practice,
And
practice.
Frank,
And
I'm sure
then,
you got a
Mhm.
lot of good third person themes that you use with people.
Oh,
And that,
yes, yes.
stories that you tell.
hmm
But the thing is that story you tell this person doesn't mean you can't tell it to another suspect in a very
Exactly. That's right. Yes, yes.
similar type of
hmm
crime. So you don't think, oh gosh, I got to come up with all these
hmm
different things for people. No, it becomes almost everybody you interrogate, whether you're successful or not,
hmm
that becomes another third person theme, you tell the person.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And what you'll find is that you're going to find your two or three favorite third person themes, and they'll keep
Yeah.
reappearing in a bunch of your interrogations, and it'll just
And,
be second nature.
and you expand on those. And I don't
Yes,
want you to
yes,
think
yes.
either, and I know you're not saying this, Frank, but don't think it's just a simple story about a case
Hmm.
that you worked on is going to turn that individual for
Exactly.
them to
Yeah.
now to certainly accept, that they did it. No, third person themes do take time. I mean, you
Hmm.
may go into an interrogation with 4 or 5 stories, and those
Hmm.
stories you may talk about them for 5 minutes, 10
Exactly.
minutes. The
Yes.
longer you talk about them,
Hmm.
the better it is. But again, is that it's allowing that person to think about you, that you do understand perhaps why they did what they did, or you've been involved with other people in similar circumstances like they are. So therefore, you do understand maybe what caused them to do what they did. That you don't
Exactly.
think of
Yes.
them
Yes.
as a bad
Hmm.
person, or from your stories, they're looking at themselves. Well, I'm not as bad as that person.
Hmm. Precisely. Precisely. Yes. I'm not alone on Loser Island.
And that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great
Yeah.
analogy, Frank. And that,
Yeah.
and a lot of these people, yeah, they are hardcore individuals, but a lot of people, they do things that obviously they shouldn't do, but still, you got to treat them with
Hmm.
decency and respect, and you got to make it a little bit easier for them a way out. And when you just
Yeah.
say, "Why'd you do it? Why'd you do it?" they're not going to tell you why they did it.
Yeah, and there's this myth of the hardened criminal, the criminal who just will not talk. But
Yeah.
but number one thing I found out about them is the method in which they were apprehended really means a whole lot. If you had a warrant for that person, you drug them out of their house and then you locked them up in the interrogation room, and then you go in there to talk to them, they're going to be extremely hostile. I don't care how good of an interview or interrogator you are. That's why it's so important. And, not to get off topic, but I hope that they handle the suspect in the Guthrie case or any case out there, any violent criminal that you apprehend. Treat them with dignity and respect. Make sure they're well fed. Make sure they have plenty to drink. And I would actually prefer them to be very well rested before I sit
Good.
down and I do an interview or an interrogation on that person. Don't just go and grab them and then put them inside of the interview room and then just expect to go in there, run an interview and an interrogation on them. A lot of the hostility and anger that comes from these so-called hardened criminals is because of how they were treated on initial contact and the fact that they may just be hungry. They may be tired and they just don't want to talk to anyone. I found that to be a real frequent occurrence.
Another thing,
Mhm.
Frank, that just a little bit
Mhm.
on that same topic is that if you happen to be the individual that's, let's say, now going to be doing the interview or the interrogation, but you weren't the person that, let's say, originally brought that person in, made the initial arrest and all that, it's essential that
Mhm.
investigator that
Exactly.
is going to be doing the interview into maybe the interrogation
Mhm.
ask the person in that interview is that
Mhm.
now how did the now you were brought in here by other officers, how
Mhm.
did they treat you,
Good,
in
good,
that,
good. Yes, yes,
um,
yes.
you know did they give you something to eat or drink or and that, throw that out. And
Mhm.
the thing is that they say, well, no, they really they just yelled at me, saying how bad a person I was. Well, that tells you is that, hey, if you start to come on strong with this person, it's going to completely turn them off and that.
Exactly.
But you don't want to either make the mistake of saying, well, this is other investigator. I'm sure when they talked to you, they were
Mhm.
yelling at you, swearing at you and all that. And I've had it where suspects will say, "Oh no, they treated
Yeah,
me
yeah.
really good."
Exactly.
And then they
Yes,
think, well,
yes.
maybe you don't know what you're talking about. So
Mhm.
always get that background from the individual.
Exactly. Yes. The background really matters, and but yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why we always do the suitability for the interview question, having
Hmm.
those questions really tailored to the person who we're talking to. But Dan, I'm really excited. I'll be doing third person themes on. I'll be finishing them up on day 4. So I'm at a seminar in Rapid City, South Dakota right
Oh,
now.
nice,
Yeah,
Frank.
yeah. So we'll be
Yeah,
hitting
yeah,
third person
yeah,
themes.
yeah. How's the weather there?
So, excuse me, it got down a little cold yesterday in the 40s, and a
Oh, okay.
rainstorm came in out of nowhere, and it's really, really windy up here in Rapid City,
Yeah.
South Dakota. But
You know, we had bad winds here in Chicago too today,
yes, you
but
do. Oh
it's sunny.
gosh.
It's 65 degrees in the middle of
Oh
February.
man, geez,
But
that's like a heat
my
wave
next
in
trip is
Chicago.
I'm heading to Singapore next week, and
Singapore. Okay, all right.
I'll be broadcasting hopefully from Singapore. I'll be doing a lot of shorts too from Singapore as well. So I
Well, that is
encourage our
excellent.
listeners and spread the word. You know, take a look at it.
That's right, yes. And to briefly recap for all of our listeners, if you have made it this far, me and Dan have a request of you. If you have any questions, could you please shoot us an email? Readontherecord@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We will be glad to read out any of your questions out loud so our listeners can avail themselves of it. So thank you so much for joining us. And Dan, good luck on your trip, my friend.
Thanks, Frank. We'll
All
talk
right.
before then, I'm sure.
Of course. All right.
Okay.
Safe travels.
Okay. Thank you.